Hi, my name is Gavin. I'm one of the design leads here at Wildebloom, and in this video, I'm going to show you how we do a nice bias binding finishing. This can be done on the armhole, on the neckline, or pretty much anywhere you see fit on your garments. To sew our bias binding, we need two ingredients: the edge that we want to bind, and our strip of binding, which is cut on the bias. Cutting this on the bias is what will give us the flexibility that we need in order to accommodate this curve. Even when you're doing a straight edge, which you absolutely can do with this technique, I still recommend cutting it on the bias because you never know how you might need to interact with the material, and cutting it on the bias makes everything easier. For this, we're just going to pin where we start, and it doesn't quite matter where we end, just so long as we know we have enough extra left over down there, especially on this edge, as that's going to roll over in a later step. So we're going to go ahead and put this in the machine. And stitch away at 1 cm. As you go around the curve, control the bias strip with your right hand. Meanwhile, you feed and control the other fabric with your left. Making sure their edges are always lined up at that 1 centimeter mark. Of course, always finish your stitch with a back stitch. Now that we have our bias binding strip sewn on, it's time to prepare it for the second stitch. What we're going to do is, keeping the bottom flat like this, we're going to push up the bias binding and iron it into place. Because of the curve, if you press too far up, it's easy to get wrinkles up in the upper edge here. So we're just going to press, focusing mostly on the seam itself. We don't need to take our iron all the way up here, for example. Just using the tip of our iron, pressing up to flatten out that seam. Move the fabric if you need to. From the front, it should look like this, and from the back, it should look like this. Now we're ready for our second round of stitching. Okay, so now that we have completed our first stitch and pressed our fabric up, we're going to press back our bias binding along the edge of our seam allowance here, making sure that we feel that edge in the fold, and then we're going to stitch right along the binding, catching that underside as we stitch. You'll see what I mean as soon as you see it. Take your time and make sure that you always feel the edge of your seam allowance right along that fold line, and make sure that you're stitching consistently on that line there, because it will be visible. Checking to make sure you're covering your previous stitch with the fabric. So your binding will look like this from the top side, and from the underside, you'll see it like this with your raw edge. Now what we're going to do is look at the wrong side, and we don't need the iron. We're just going to fold this back using the edge as our strength, and we're going to do an edge stitch here on the other side to tack it back. best way on these domestic machines to make sure that we're getting a beautiful line on the outside is to line up the edge of our fabric here on the edge of our foot. And there we have it on the inside. Our line may get a little bit messy, but on the outside, it's nice and beautiful and consistent. Now that we've completed the final stage of our sewing, we're going to go ahead and press along our curve to get rid of any wrinkles and make it look nice and clean. What we don't want to do is push the iron along the bias this way. So we want to go ahead and press in the direction of our grain line up or in the direction of our grain line over. That way we don't cause any unnecessary stretch. Rotate as needed. We'll go ahead and chop off our excess. And there we have it, a lovely bias binding that you can use to finish off your neckline, your sleeve, or your hem, or anywhere that you might feel is the best place for this type of finishing. And with that, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and happy making.